Well, it's time to give them a hard pounding, gentlemen. This time we're going to be painting some of the English Civil War / 30 Years War artillery pieces. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and leave some comments down below of what you'd like to see next. So I've been starting these miniatures off with a black spray paint to do the base coat, and now because these are predominantly wooden, I'm going to be using leather brown from Game Colour. It's quite a light colour, which is good because when we apply the wash later on, that will then dull down the wood effect and make it look really good and quite realistic. Just at this stage it is quite bright and looks a bit off, let's say. But I'm very happy with the Warlord Games range. I think these Epic Battles units and miniatures are very good quality, and I also think it's a very good idea to get people into the game. It would be quite nice if they could do a slightly smaller starter box rather than the large ones. Literally sort of a battalion per side with an artillery piece and, I don't know, a couple of bases of cavalry as well, but for either side, just so that you could buy it and give it to someone who has never played before and they can get into the game quite quickly. But hey, that's just my thoughts. So with, as you saw in that picture a couple of seconds ago, some of the men I've painted in different colours. So one of them I used red, crimson red from System 3 just to pick out his uniform. Another one I've used bone white from Game Colour, as you can see here. And another chap, he's just got ice white as well for his tunic, and that's from Game Colour. So I just mixed a few different colours in just to give it a little bit of variety. And this is something that I do like about the slightly less uniform armies, is that it does give you the opportunity to kind of make each man an individual. Next up we're going to do the metalwork on the weapons, and so we're using silver from Game Colour. So it is quite a bright colour, being silver rather than iron or some other colour that you might have. The reason is, as you may have heard me say before, but if not, on these smaller scales I rather use a bright colour to start with and then dull it down with a wash, rather than going straight with a dark colour and then the wash on top of that, which will dull it down too much. Plus with my method of painting, I literally use the one colour for the base coat, put the wash over it, and then I use the same base coat colour to do the highlights at a later date. Saves having to have multiple different shades of blues and greens and all sorts to try and build your layers up. I'm all for speed painting and getting the miniatures to a good standard so that they can be on the table fast rather than individual works of art. Sometimes I enjoy doing that, but that tends to be more for when I'm painting a 28mm commander up to a very high standard rather than the rank and file. But yes, as with most miniatures, just take your time. The amount of times that I think I've painted everything silver, let's say, or metal on a figure, and then I come back to do the next coat of paint and I realise I've missed chunks off. It happens a lot. So just take your time and make sure you get it all. But if you do miss, it's not really the end of the world. And this is something that I've quite enjoyed about the English Civil War, the Pike and Shotte Battles range, is the different scale, or different sizes I should say, of artillery pieces being represented, which I think is quite good. In the Napoleonic range, as far as I'm aware, it's just one size of artillery piece to represent all of the different sizes, whereas here you actually get the representation on the table, which is quite cool. So next up we're going to be using ice white from Game Colour, just to pick out those sort of jackets like I mentioned earlier, and some of the hats, bits and pieces of that nature. Then we're going to use flat flesh from Tamiya Colour to do the flesh tones on the miniatures. and it is a nice colour. Just make sure you keep it moist as you go. I don't have a wet palette, although I should try and get into it. It was recommended to me to do. I think that might actually solve the problem. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And just take your time, especially on these artillery pieces where there's quite a lot of stuff happening all in one area. You don't want to put paint in the wrong place, so as I say, just take your time and make sure you do it right the first time. That way you don't need to go back and clean up later. However, if you are using acrylic paints and you do splodge it over, then have a second paintbrush ready, and then you can just dip that in some water and then quickly sort of soak that area with the water, and then that takes the acrylic paint away. Then you can just quickly dry it up with a dry brush or a piece of tissue paper. So for me, when I'm painting, I tend to try and line up several units all at the same time, and then that way I can do all of the same colours kind of simultaneously to get the army out as quickly as possible. So once we've finished with our base coats, then we go in using a dark wash. I usually use dark brown to dull it all down, and then we go back in using the original colours just to highlight, and that gives us our final pieces. So I think these have come out very well, and I think they're going to be very nice on the table once they're finished. I hope you liked the video. Hope it gave you some ideas on how to do your artillery pieces. And until next time, take care.